if you should be seeing my screen now, but I'm not sure if you are. Yeah, you are seeing my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Walter, for this opportunity. I've already briefly introduced myself, and I would like to talk to you today about migrating to AWS, the reason why people do it and what companies do it and what they've gained by it. That's a little bit more of the business take on it. And actually, if we talk about migration, we talk really about digital transformation. And it's my firm belief that companies in general need to accelerate their innovation if they want to stay relevant long term. And digital transformation is a key essential building block for innovation. That's of course clear, I suppose. I found recently MIT research, MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where they found that those companies that have embraced digital, and I quote, companies that have embraced digital transformation are 26% more profitable than their average industry competitors and enjoy a 12% higher market valuation. Well, in my opinion, that is reason enough to spend an hour on the subject, or actually now for me 10 to 15 minutes on this subject and the business reasons why to migrate. So over the years, we have engaged with thousands of customers, and they have all had multiple reasons and some very different reasons why to migrate. Some were very big and had very specific workloads, others were very small and had very broad workloads. But generally speaking, there are a couple of reasons why they migrate. One is, even today during these specific COVID impacted times, companies and organizations want to strategically modernize their back and front end processes, really to differentiate their organization. So that is one, is really, I would call it, it's really the digital transformation they're making. Others say, no, I want to migrate because I want to free up my staff and make sure that my staff is as productive as possible to do the differentiated work where they can make a difference for the products I'm offering instead of the indifferentiated work that they sometimes get caught up in. Then of course there is cost optimization, that is, or data center migrations, data center consolidations is a good reason for people to move and migrate to AWS. And all these different reasons we'll be discussing in this couple of minutes I'm spending with you. Sorry. So cost savings is the first that comes to mind. Actually, it's most of what people start talking about, but in all honesty, the value is really, I think, at the end of the day, at the right-hand side of the screen. It is about staff productivity, operational resilience, and business agility. Those are the real reasons, I suppose. That's where the real benefit is at the end of the day. It was IDC that interviewed 27 different organizations around the world that had these reasons I mentioned earlier to migrate to AWS. And it was IDC that researched, okay, so what at the end of the day, what were the reasons, but more importantly, what did companies gain by their migration? And actually, see, that's where we found out that on the right-hand side of this previous slide, those were the really interesting reasons. Because so let's start with the cost though. It is so creating the more cost-effective IT environment by optimizing compute, storage, and database costs, for example, and moving away from own IT infrastructures. That has led to, as calculated by IDC, to a 31% less spent in infrastructure costs. So that's quite an achievement. If you then say shifting IT staff, so that was actually the second, so it's more productive IT staff. If shifting IT staff to differentiated workloads instead of indifferentiated workloads, and so you really let them work on strategic business initiatives, they have found that well, infrastructure teams will on an average be 62% more efficient. Application developers will be 25% more productive with AWS. So the productivity boost by moving to public cloud is enormous. And of course, a huge gain. Yeah, huge gain. Then not unimportant, I would say, is because the public cloud delivers all these services on a ready-to-go basis. Companies were able to really innovate faster and deliver 3 times more services a year, iterations on applications or additional services, innovations, which at the end of the day, of course, had a huge impact on their revenue. So all in all, it was not only companies had good reasons to move to the cloud, but after we have researched worldwide 27 companies, IDC has done this for us, and they really gained by it quite dramatically. 2 examples of those, and actually while using the same technologies, you could say completely different, in a way, the same time period. So during COVID, Just Eat Takeaway and Qantas made huge differences to their platforms. So Just Eat Takeaway is a dream of a Dutch entrepreneur that now owns or heads the biggest outside of China, the biggest largest food delivery platform in the world. It is and they really grew dramatically during COVID. Of course, a lot of customers sitting at the home wanting to order food. So they needed really scale, but that was one side of the spectrum, because on the other side there were more and more restaurants that wanted to be onboarded, and they had. So I think that Just Eat Takeaway needed 2 things. One is they needed the scale, which we were able to deliver, but more importantly, they needed solutions for their employees to work from home and still be able to continue to onboard those restaurants. That was very important, and we were able to do both of them. So they grew quite dramatically. On the other hand, Qantas, at a different end of the spectrum, they of course are the leading airline company in Australia, and they had the issue that, of course, nobody's flying anymore, or a lot less at least. And they have moved to AWS in a rapid pace. They have 60% of their infrastructure currently, more or less, has been moved to AWS. 200 and more applications have been moved. And the reasons for them, of course, become more agile, but specifically cost savings in the short term. And what I found interesting, that they saved 30% cost as reported by their CIO. Mainly due to 2 things. One is right-sizing their EC2 and EBS instances, so you could say their VMs and their storage. Just make sure that the right amount of VMs with the right size for what they were needing. And secondly, they just turn off instances when they don't need them. So for example, if they don't need them at night, they turn them off, and they've automated that process. And with that, they're saving tons of money. So 2 examples, both using the same infrastructure, both migrated, but for completely different reasons. So if a question I would have if I were you is why would I migrate with AWS? And I think there are many reasons, but a couple of those we have highlighted here. It is over the years. We have a saying within AWS, there's no compression algorithm for experience. And that is what we have. We have the most migration experience. We've done it for many years. We've done many thousands of migrations. And due to that, we have developed the most tools, methods to be able to do this seamlessly. And we've build this together with our partners. Very important. We are customer obsessed, but fully partner focused. We do it with partners like HeliCloud, and they themselves have a lot of experience in migrating customers with all different kinds of workloads to the cloud. And then one last thing I'd like to say about is that we have all kinds of programs to accelerate your cloud journey. And programs meaning we can do migration evaluation upfront. We can help you with templates. We can help you with business plans. We can support you in your migrations, and also in cases with funding, depending on the business case. So a lot of reasons why to do it, and primarily also because we have the partner ecosystem to support you. Andy Jassy, our CEO currently, is going to move on in a couple of months' time to become the CEO of the whole of Amazon, but currently the CEO of AWS. At reInvent talked about strong leadership, and it is strong leadership is important in migration, in the whole philosophy around digital transformation. And it's very important, and he talked about it for a reason. We studied over the last years, we studied 2,000 different migrations, and we see there very clearly a pattern of success. So where strong business IT executive leaderships makes a huge difference to the velocity, the speed of transformation, and the scope of migration. So it is important to have strong leadership with a strong vision on the subject. Secondly, we observed the cultural importance of decisiveness. It goes to the cultural approach to risk, small decisions, and learning. So we find that companies need to embrace a culture of experiment, fail, and learn, versus over analysis and not moving ahead, right? So there were two ends of the spectrum. But experiment, fail, and learn really helps in moving ahead. And then we have learnings from observing many portfolios, many application landscapes. And there it helps to prioritize which applications, which landscapes go first. And the portfolio is likely about 60% Windows, 40% Linux. And companies need to make a decision. You need to make a decision for both, you know, and the apps within, which goes first, where's the most to gain. And as we journey with customers to a 90 or 100% migrating model, building new levels of automation into monitoring, into their visibility, in automation, in provisioning, that further reduces the cost. That's what we have seen over time. And it, besides reducing cost of operations, it increases operational resiliency, and it at the end of the day, it leads to customer confidence. And the operational resiliency is, besides it's very important for customer confidence, it really adds, or it's really is important to your bottom line, right? Downtime, outages, etc., is very bad for revenue. And then it is, I'm sure you have many questions. I would have before you start a process like, do you really need a business case? And how, if so, how do you make a compelling one? What do you want to move to AWS? In which order then? And for example, would it be a lift and shift? Is it re-platform? Is it refactor, etc.? Questions like that. How do I start? All these questions are very relevant. Vito will briefly touch base on them as well. But it is something we can help you with. Something HeliCloud will help you with. We will help you in that journey. We have all the materials to do that for you. With that, I leave you with two comments, if that's okay. I've mentioned them before, but companies really need to accelerate their innovation if they want to stay relevant long term. Digital transformation is the essential building block of innovation, really. So take that with you. And another thing is, just I've mentioned before, but companies that have embraced digital transformation are 26% more profitable than their average industry competitor, according to MIT. Thank you so much. Vito, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Paul. Vito, I'll make you a presenter now. Paul, I have a couple of questions, but I'll save them for after Vito is done, so we can have a bit of a discussion together.
Sure.
But thank you for your presentation, and we'll let Vito talk, and then after that we'll do a little discussion.
Yeah, great.
I've made you a presenter, Vito, but it says paused in the screen.
What about now?
There you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, now you should also see me, right?
Correct.
Perfect. So, hi again, everyone, and welcome to this session. This will be basically a continuation, a smooth continuation from the presentation that you just saw. Today, I'm going to talk about the process to migrate to the cloud. I acknowledge that this is a big and complex topic, and it's difficult to cover all the aspects in a short amount of time. So I'll do my best, bear with me. Let's have a look on what we'll be covering in the next 20 minutes or so. First, we're going to give an overview of how a typical migration process looks like. And then we're going to dive deep in each phase of the process to highlight the core activities involved, as well as tools that can help on successfully completing those tasks. As we have talked to many leaders about migrating to AWS, there are a lot of common questions that come up early on, like, do I really need a business case? And how do I create a compelling business case? What do I move to AWS, and in what order makes more sense? How do I start? Do we have the skills to migrate and then operate into the cloud? All these questions are as much around people and processes as they are around technology. So it's not only a technology talking. At AWS, we have taken our 12 years of experience in helping enterprise migrate and modernize and build a proven approach for large-scale migrations. So there are three phases in our approach to complete large-scale migrations, and then you start operating and optimizing into the cloud. First, an assessment phase, where we build a business case and perform a cloud readiness assessment on the organization. Second, a mobilization phase, where we build a migration plan, mobilize businesses to migrate at scale, and prepare AWS environments to host your workloads. And third, a migration and modernization phase, where we actually move workloads to AWS. And a cloud operating model is put in place once in AWS to run and optimize. There are many tools and services available in AWS associated with each stage of migration. And today, we're going to talk about some of those tools, but you can always reach out if you want to know more. Now, let's dive into each of those phases to understand what happens there and what tools can be used. The assessment phase is where we start building the business case. And in order to build this business case, we first need to measure the current readiness of operating into the cloud. Is the organization ready to be on the cloud? This ensures that we are taking all factors into account. So what it means, cloud adoption changes the way you provision and operate IT resources. But this affects the entire organization, not only IT. And so it requires that fundamental changes are discussed and considered across the entire organization, and that stakeholders across all units, both outside and within IT, support those changes. AWS developed the Cloud Adoption Framework to help organizations address this transformation process and provide structure to identify and address gaps in skill and processes. As you can see from the slide, the framework consists of 6 perspectives, and these are organized to take into account the readiness holistically, including business and technological topics. On the business side, It highlights business value realization, people roles and readiness, and governance-related aspects. On the technical side, there are capabilities involving platform and application infrastructure, security, and operations. I encourage you to read the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework white paper to get further details. So the outcome is a migration readiness assessment. And this starts from a guided questionnaire built around Cloud Adoption Framework perspective. What kind of questions? Well, think about topics such as, have you clearly defined the scope and the business case for the migration? Is your AWS environment secure enough to be a landing zone for your applications? Do you have the right experience necessary to move the tech stacks that are in the scope? And so on. Collecting answers to those questions evolves into a board-level report that helps identify gaps and inform the next phase of the migration process, where we address any readiness needs. Now, the tool you might want to use to perform such assessment depends on the scale of the migration. And here are a few options that you can consider. First, the Cloud Adoption Readiness Tool. This is an online self-service tool that you can use in case of small, medium-sized organization and migration initiatives. You can get a very quick report on readiness with high-level recommendation on what is required to fill the gaps in your current situation to adopt cloud. For larger initiatives, we recommend to run a migration readiness assessment workshop. This is an interactive workshop where customer stakeholders and team members from across the IT organization participate, sharing and aggregating information to build a common view of the current state. At the end of this exercise, customers receive valuable insights to their organization readiness and discover potential blockers. The output is a recommended action plan for all critical observations that fits the Mobilize project plan activities specific to the customer. In order to create the business case, you could also leverage Migration Evaluator, formerly known as TSO Logic, to create a total cost of ownership analysis and provide highlights on the financial impact of the cloud migration. The service analyzes an enterprise compute footprint, including server configuration, utilization, annual cost to operate, licensing, and a lot of other parameters. And it then statistically models utilization patterns matching each workload with optimized placements in AWS compute and storage resources. And finally, it outputs a business case with a comparison between the two situations. Next phase is mobilize. The goal of this phase are mainly two. First, design a migration plan. And second, prepare the organization to perform the migration and operate workloads into the cloud. Planning for migration means understanding what applications do you need to migrate, how they relate to each other, which migration approach to apply, how to give priorities to workloads. Preparing for the move, the organization, means a lot of things. Setting up your AWS cloud environments, having the right people in place to perform the migration and support workloads into the cloud, either training them or relying on AWS partners. Adapting your operating model to support cloud operations by developing runbooks for monitoring, logging, provisioning, configuration management, as well as adopting your business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan. Also, addressing security by updating governance risk and compliance model, implementing preventive measures, and creating security responses playbooks. I would like to spend a bit more time on the migration planning and setting up your cloud environment, which are two of the most important tasks of this phase. So how do we design a migration plan? Well, first we collect as many data as possible on the current state, leveraging sources such as an existing CMDB, results from assessment phase, architectural diagrams, conducting discovery workshops with stakeholders, and using discovery tools from AWS, such as AWS Discovery Service, or numerous partners. We'll need data points such as application data, including business criticality, which might dictate priority of migration, characteristics that describe the app behavior, For example, think about stateless versus stateful. That might be used for migration design. We're looking for grouping of application in stacks. Think about three-tier application. So we will group web server, application server, and database together. Interdependencies, licensing, and so many others. Next to application data, we'd want to collect server data such as operating systems, CPU, RAM, disk, that can help determine type of virtual machines to be used in the target cloud environment. And even more, networking configurations such as firewall rules that can be used to recreate the same controls onto the cloud, and storage information to perform capacity planning on cloud storage. From what I just mentioned, you can already see that discovering and organizing the data allow you to start an analysis that leads to mapping the current state to cloud resources and categorize applications based on patterns or common traits. For example, you could get insights such as the distribution of databases you have across multiple database platforms, or grouping applications by business unit, for example, or even by type of environment, production, development, and so on, or even grouping based on the migration strategy that you're going to follow. Now that we have all this data we discovered well organized, we can make informed decisions on which migration strategy makes sense for each application and what are the priorities to create the migration plan backlog. Unfortunately, today there is not enough time to cover in details all the migration strategies. However, it's important to mention that every approach has pros and cons, and it's important to understand the implication for each particular application in terms of benefits and effort. AWS, with partners, help evaluate these type of migrations and classify your workloads for each one of them. Keep in mind that selecting rehost, or aka lift and shift, can help you move quickly to the cloud. After the application is migrated, you should follow a continuous improvement approach by assessing the status and find opportunities to modernize to better leverage all the potential of managed services and higher level capabilities of the cloud. Last thing on planning is setting priorities. And we should consider here a number of factors. I will just mention two which are very important: business criticality and application complexity. Why do you want to keep those two? Well, business criticality is important because to minimize the risk, perhaps you want to consider migrating the least critical application first. And what about complexity? Well, based on number of dependencies, tech stacks, architecture, you could decide to migrate first the one with least complexity. Why we should go for the least complexity and minimize risk? Well, in this way, you can quickly migrate with low-hanging fruit, get the advantage of moving to the cloud, and at the same time, you build your experience to deal with more difficult migration waves. So once we have a plan, we'd want to start migrating right away. And when it comes to time to start the journey into the cloud, customers face the challenge to find the right design for their AWS environment and make sure the organization is ready to support a growing number of highly available and scalable applications while ensuring security, auditing, and governance are in place. So a few years back, AWS came with the concept of a landing zone, which is a safe place where you can land your workloads into the cloud. And it aims to provide an AWS environment with a multi-account structure. An AWS account is basically a container of resources such as networks, virtual machines, storage volumes, etc. And it comes empty from AWS. In order to build your environment, you're faced with making numerous design decisions: number of types of accounts, networking structure, user access, log aggregation, configuring multiple accounts and services, developing security baselines. The landing zone concept aimed at organizing a set of accounts with initial pre-configured security and governance controls, and offering an automated way to provision new accounts, applying a baseline, which involves enabling security features, set up connectivity, for example, with other accounts and on-premises networks, and providing resources that will help in deploying workloads. The landing zone concept eventually evolved in a service which is called AWS Control Tower. And this service can be used to set up an AWS multi-account environment. It provides the easiest way to set up and govern a new secure multi-account environment based on best practices. You'll have an initial structure with a number of accounts dealing with core services, such as logging and networking, and an account vending machine that allows you to create new accounts when needed and apply security baselines and additional initialization resources. And also you'll get a single sign-on solution for access management and roles to define what people in different roles can do on which accounts. And obviously the solution is also extensible based on your specific requirements. Now, finally, we are in the migration phase. And in the migration and modernization phase, we move workloads to the cloud and start operating into AWS. Based on the migration backlog formed as output from the previous step, typically migration happens in waves, applications that are interconnected and requires to be moved together, for instance. As applications are migrated to AWS, they move to the operations phase, where you iterate on your new foundation, turn off old systems, and consistently iterate towards a modern operating model. What about migration then? Well, by quickly lifting and shifting, there are already a number of advantages in terms of operational efficiency, cost, and agility. At this stage, you have full control on the infrastructure to run and operate workloads, because the AWS infrastructure make this possible. AWS, however, provides higher level services that allow you to further remove what we call undifferentiated heavy lifting from your hands. If you have a database, for example, on a virtual machine, for example, you want to manage that host in terms of, you'll have to manage that host in terms of patching, user access, application updates. By leveraging managed services such as Amazon RDS, Relational Database Service, you could then be relieved from such activities to be able to focus on what differentiates your application, namely your data schema and the queries on that database. Even further, you should consider AWS as a growing number of building blocks that you can combine to create reliable applications without managing the infrastructure underlying those services. You could redesign your application to become more modular and loosely coupled to achieve greater scalability and flexibility, both from application performance and from a team structure perspective as the application grows. Now, what tools can we use for this phase? Well, with AWS ecosystem of partners, there are a number of possibilities, and each migration strategy will leverage a different set of those tools. But today, I want to focus on a couple of them: CloudEndure and AWS Migration Hub. CloudEndure, acquired by AWS in January 2019, is used by customers and partners for large-scale lift and shift server migrations. It supports a wide range of platforms, and it's based on block-level replication. Basically, what it does is that an agent needs to be installed in your source environment that connects to a staging area which is provided into the AWS account that you select. The staging area consists of lightweight EC2 instances acting as replication server and low-cost block storage on AWS, where to write the replicated data received from the source environment. And the agent keep track and replicate any changes to the source disk with continuous async block level data replication, so that the staging area is always in sync with your data. When it comes the moment of the cutover or testing, then CloudEndure will spin up a proper AWS environment to support your production workloads, and then move all the data that is available in the staging area to this new environment in a matter of minutes, so that basically you can move your workloads almost instantly with minimal downtime. This is a really powerful tool for lift and shift migration because it eliminates complexity and reduces risk and allows for cutover with minimal business disruption. AWS Migration Hub is designed to be a single location to track the progress of application migrations. across AWS and partner solution. This is very important because while you are doing migration waves, you want to keep track of your progress. And with AWS Migration Hub, you can discover your on-premises portfolio using AWS Application Discovery Service, for example, or you can import discovery data from existing sources or from other discovery tools that you want to use. And then in the hub, you can view server information, group servers into applications to help plan your migration, and track the progress of your migration using the migration tools that best fits your needs. Migration Hub is available to all the AWS customers at no additional charge, and you only pay for the cost of the migration tools you use. So here are some actions you could take to get started. While you go through the list, let's recap the key points of a successful migration. First, follow the process. It's important. Conduct an assessment and build your business for the migration. Choose the right migration strategy. 4, make sure you have the skills and build experience to become better at every migrated application. Choose wisely the target cloud operating model for your environment. And finally, try to migrate quickly. Don't overthink too much so that you can get the benefit for the cloud and then start modernization sooner than later.